welcome. No.
Maybe I should start us off.
Bleep.
Let's try
Restart.
this again. Am I starting us or are you? Okay. Weird. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the More Than Able podcast, season 2, episode 1.
It's really loud.
I gotta have a big intro. It's season 2.
It is season 2. It's exciting.
We're a day behind.
Yeah, we are a day
We are
behind.
a day behind.
But life. We're getting snow here. We're getting thunderstorms and like
Tornadoes,
50 degrees
hail.
and hail and then snow
And then
it's like 5
zeros.
outside.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy.
Well, and
Welcome back to Arkansas.
Yeah. Good Lord. He is a good Lord. He is a good Lord. We serve a mighty, mighty God.
But also good Lord.
But yes, good Lord. It is cold. And by cold, I mean vehicles won't start cold.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Heather's vehicle, she tried to go grocery shopping yesterday and it wouldn't run.
Mm-hmm.
It would not run. And then I went and did the grocery shop and come home and I couldn't get it to run. And then after several hours and 3 men later, we finally got hers running today, and mine wouldn't start this morning. And
They said it's just too cold. I'm not gonna do anything today, which I would agree.
Yeah.
Just stay inside and not do anything.
so yeah, there's been the cold and there's been tornadoes. And if y'all have listened to our bonus episodes, we have relocated to Arkansas, and with that,
If you haven't listened, what are you doing? Like, go back and listen.
go back and listen to them because there's a lot of stuff there. But there's a lot that we've talked about before the move, during the move, and since we've moved. And I'll just say this, we're people. We don't have it all together. The move has been a great thing, but it's also been a very difficult thing. Mm-hmm. There has been a ton of emotions wrapped up in that. Heather and I both have had our days where we're just like, this is really freaking hard. Mm-hmm. And that was yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. And then you throw not running vehicles on top of it and not getting all the hours I need for work. And Heather's still looking for a job. It's
a culmination of everything.
And I'm sure you all know everybody's dealing with stuff on top of stuff on top of stuff. But with all of that, something me and Heather have discussed many times throughout our marriage, and we felt like this would be a great subject matter to launch off season 2. It's not my job to make you happy.
What? It's not.
Nope.
It's not your job to make me happy. You're my husband.
It's not my job.
You're supposed to make me happy. You're supposed to make me the happiest girl in the whole wide world.
Right? I can help and I can do my part and vice versa, but it is not my job. It's not my responsibility to make you happy.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a it's a tough subject because I think a lot of people go into marriage thinking that you're supposed to be happy in your marriage, right? Like,
absolutely.
Marriage is supposed to make me happy. My spouse is supposed to make me happy, but happiness is very circumstantial. It is dependent on what's going on around you.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, maybe today I'm not happy. Yesterday for me, I was not happy yesterday. I was having a really hard day. I was really struggling. And there was nothing that you could have done to make that better. I mean, you can do what you can do to try to encourage me, but ultimately, like, you're not my source of happiness.
And that's what I was going to say, with yesterday, and as difficult as that was for you and as frustrating as it was for me, I can't flip a switch and make you happy. Mm-hmm. But even more so than that, I can't give you joy and peace. Yeah. And so when we are struggling with things and we're dealing with the emotions and dealing with missing friends and family and, our daughter had a rough day at school on her second day, and I encouraged her the best I could. I loved on her. I spoke, I spoke life into her, but ultimately I can't make her happy.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for you. You know, as difficult as yesterday was for you, I could have said a million words.
Yeah.
But most likely it's not going to change the way you're feeling.
Yeah. And so, you know, whenever you're feeling that way, like for me, it was very circumstantial as far as how I was feeling. You know, I think your happiness can be circumstantial, but also your sadness or your frustration or your anger or whatever you're feeling, like emotions in and of themselves are very circumstantial. Depending on what's happening in your day, like you're going to have different emotions tied to that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, your joy and your peace come from God.
And that's where they should come from.
Even in the midst of everything I was feeling yesterday, it was tied to being here and just the frustration of not having a job yet. And like your hours have not been great because of the weather. And so there's just a whole lot of frustration tied up in that. And nothing that, you know, either one of us have done intentionally. Is just the circumstances of the moment. But beyond that, I still had peace about being here. Yeah. Like, even though there's like doubts and negative thoughts swirling in my head, like underneath the surface, there was still that peace, which is knowing that we're where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that didn't come from a circumstance. It didn't come from me. You.
No.
That comes from God.
Yeah.
And even though I might not have been feeling joy in that moment, there was joy somewhere down inside, which is why I woke up today and felt better. And like, I wasn't caught up. I didn't get wrapped up in the circumstances of yesterday, allowing that to just, now my life is crap and it's bad and it's always going to, like, it was circumstantial. And because I have the joy and peace that only comes from God, I'm able to wake up the next day. And I knew yesterday, I'm like, tomorrow's going to be a better day, I'm sure, because that's just how it works.
Yeah.
And, you know, but when you don't have that joy and that peace that come from God, one, you're always going to be searching for that, but you're going to be searching for it in some of the wrong places.
Well, and all of that you're being said, it's like there's a lot of things that me as your spouse or vice versa, that we are completely incapable of doing.
Yeah.
Like the reason you woke up feeling the way you did today, like you said, was because of God. Like our circumstances weren't any different this morning than they were yesterday.
No.
You know, actually it was a little bit worse because my truck didn't want to start.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to have some of our best friends up this weekend, and that didn't happen because of the weather and sickness, and that sucks.
Yeah.
And we were all looking forward to it. So again, our circumstances didn't change, but you felt the peace and the joy that you felt because of God.
Yeah.
And so with all of that, like this week, I've struggled with negative thoughts and emotions, and feeling like, did I make the right decision? Am I in the right place? Am I going to be able to do this new job? Am I going to learn everything I need to learn? And then just missing my brothers. But in those moments, like I reached out to you, and I was like, I just need you to pray for me. Mm-hmm. Like I'm feeling super anxious. I feel like my insides are just crawling, you know, and then I told you about all the negative feelings that I was having and the negative emotions that I was dealing with. And not so that you can give me an answer on what I should do.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not your job to make me happy, but sharing that burden so that you can speak life into me and you can pray with me and pray over me.
Yeah. Well, and what I've seen it like over the last several months, like we have had so many times of whether it's negative thoughts or, you know, doubts about what we're hearing God speak or, you know, whatever, it's always been either you or me. Like, I don't know that I can think of any time where we were both struggling to the point that we couldn't encourage one another.
No.
Like, it's usually either you're struggling or I'm struggling.
Especially in the last 6 months.
And I feel like that is like God allowing us to not struggle at the same time so that the other can encourage.
Yeah.
Like, you were struggling earlier this week and I wasn't, and that allowed me to encourage you. and I was struggling yesterday, and if you were struggling yesterday, you weren't struggling as much as I was, because you were still able to encourage me.
Yeah.
Because it's really difficult to encourage someone when you're also really, really struggling with something.
But I think it's a matter of not just me and you being able to encourage one another, but having those people in your corner, you know, our parents, our friends, and having those other people that we can reach out to and tell them, hey, this is what we're struggling with.
Yeah. And so I think just being vulnerable with each other to share those things, but also being vulnerable with those people in your life that you trust the most.
And vulnerability can be really hard.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, we've not always been that way.
No.
You know, we've not always been one to share, whether it's with each other or somebody else. That's something that we have really learned and grown in over the last several years.
Yeah. Well, and I think it takes a level of humility really to share how you're truly feeling.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's really easy to just want people to think that you're doing okay and you're doing great. Like, oh, we moved to Arkansas and now everything's wonderful.
Perfect. Not.
Like
It's not.
That's
like,
not life.
No,
like,
it's
not real life. And I would have a hard time believing someone who said that, who was like, yeah, we just did this super hard thing and changed our lives and everything is great and perfect.
Liar.
I would have a really hard time believing that, because that's just not the way
not the way life works. It doesn't.
I mean, it really doesn't.
We know that God has called us to Arkansas. We've been praying about it and seeking counsel on it for a long time. And we did it. We stepped out of the boat. But just like in the story of Peter stepping out on the water, he got scared after he stepped out of the water. Well, I wouldn't say that I'm scared, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. It is not easy. It's very difficult. You know, we were very active with everybody that was part of our lives. We were part of a life group with the church that we were part of. We were active in our church. We served in our church. And we're working to get to those things again here. But, you know, even me and Heather talked about this week, as we were so active with all of our friends in our church that we would say, what do we have going on tonight? What do we have? What's going on this weekend? And in the 4 weeks that we've been here, almost exactly a month now, I think other than Christmas and New Year's, it's been just, sorry about that. I even put my phone on silent. It's been very calm, very still, which isn't a bad thing.
No,
but it's
just very different.
It's not what we're used to.
Well, talking about, you know, things kind of getting harder, I today was looking back through just some different things that highlighted in some books and devotions that I read over the last several months, just as a way of like reminding some of the things that God has spoken to us over the last many months. That was something that our spiritual mama in Texas, Lova, she had told us. She said, you know, when you move, the attacks are going to come, and you're going to need reminders of the things that God has spoke to you. And so I was looking back through some of those things today, and I found, I think this was from a book that I read. It was called Follow the Cloud, which is just referencing when the Israelites come out of Egypt, that God gave them a cloud to follow during the day and a pillar of fire at night. And so following the cloud is following God. And so this passage, it says, following the cloud doesn't mean your circumstances will always be better. Sometimes they seem to get worse. It doesn't mean everything will be easier. It often feels harder. It doesn't mean that there won't be challenges. There will be, but everywhere he leads you is always better than where you have been, because he is there. And that was like a good encouragement for me of like, hey, it's okay that it's harder. Like, that's normal. You know, just because God led us here didn't mean that it was going to be easier. Yeah. And, you know, I remember reading that many months ago. I read that book back in August, and when we were first, you know, really feeling like this is where God was kind of nudging us towards. And
we still didn't even know then at that point. It was like, yeah, this is happening.
Yeah. That was just, it was like an idea that was beginning to swirl. But, you know, it would be really easy for me to sit here and be mad at Terry because we're here and I don't feel happy all the time, and that's your fault. Like,
or vice versa.
Yeah.
Or like, I know one of your concerns is that we're going to struggle financially because you haven't found a job.
Yeah.
And it'd be really easy, and I know you voiced this, is it'd be really easy for me to say, well, we're struggling because you're not working.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, you're not in a job yet because God hasn't opened that door yet.
Yeah.
But it would be really easy for both of us to look at each other. So we're talking about, it's not my responsibility for you to be happy, but it would also be really easy for me to say that I'm not happy because of you, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And so with both of those things, when we're in a position where we feel like I'm not happy or I want to be happy, we have to take those concerns to God. Mm-hmm. And he has to be the source that gives us our peace. You know, our source cannot be our spouse.
Yeah.
And so if my source is Heather, it's going to fall apart.
Yeah. You're never, like, you're going to feel miserable because I'm going to let you down time and again.
Well,
and whenever I have a bad day and you're looking to me to be your source of joy and peace.
That's where I was going to go.
And like, I think about the tremendous amount of anxiety I experienced, you know, in the couple of weeks before we moved. Like, I was having such intense anxiety, had to get on, you know, some hefty anxiety medicine because I literally felt like I was going to die.
Yeah.
Like, that was the intense anxiety. If during that time you were looking to me to be your source of peace,
we're crap out of luck.
Yeah, like that would have not worked at all.
No.
I mean, it's already hard, I'm sure, to, like, you know, I'm struggling over here. You can't do anything for me. You feel helpless.
And then I'm struggling and I look to you. Like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not.
We would have both completely fell apart.
So you're not my source. I'm not your source. So, okay, let's define source. What is a source?
So what does source look like? What's that mean? So we looked up the definition of source, which there's some different definitions. So one is a point of origin. Another one is one that initiates. Another definition is a point or place at which something is invented or provided. And another one is the beginning part of a stream. So some of the synonyms. So if you don't know what a synonym is, it is a word that is similar to this word.
Yeah.
So some of the synonyms are genesis, day one, beginning, inception, headstream, baseline, ground zero, and square one. So these were really, like, when we were talking about this the other day, we were talking about some of these words and how like ground zero, if somebody says ground zero or square one, like, you immediately have like a picture in your head of like the start of something, the beginning of something. So if I'm looking for you to be my source, that means I'm looking for you to be ground zero of my joy, ground zero of my peace. My baseline, like the very start, the inception. You know, and you just can't be, because
none of those things.
Guess what? You weren't at the beginning.
Nope.
I wasn't at the beginning.
Nope.
Like Genesis, it says Genesis, day one, beginning. Like, what are all of those things?
God.
Genesis 1:1, day one, in the beginning. Like, we weren't there.
Nope.
The only one who was there was God.
A point of origin, God.
Yeah.
You know, the one I really liked was the beginning part of a stream. So Heather's parents, they live about 45 minutes from us, and directly across from where they live, there's a stream, a creek, and you can actually walk up the creek and get to the source of where that creek begins. And it is actually flowing out of the mountainside. So there's a stream flowing out of the mountainside, and that is the source of probably one of the most gorgeous creeks I've ever been to. You know, there's sheer bluffs, there's some super deep waters, but there's also some super shallow waters. And man, sitting here saying that makes me think, you know, God is our source. He can make a beautiful thing, but there can also be super deep waters that we have to navigate. But it doesn't mean that there won't be super shallow waters we have to navigate. And when I mean like deep to shallow, I mean there's parts of that creek that you can walk across that your feet are barely covered in water.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other parts that are probably 20 feet deep, if not deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that could be a real, like, symbolical image of what life can be like.
Mm-hmm.
But if we are always looking to the correct source, he'll bring us through it.
Well, and no matter how deep the waters are that you go through,
He's still there.
your source doesn't change.
Mm-mm.
Like the same shallow water and the same deep water, like they come from the same source.
Yeah.
Like there's no like, okay, well this spring over here is feeding the deep water and this spring is feeding the shallow water.
No,
it's all coming from the same source.
Yeah.
And so no matter what good times we're in or what, hard times we're in, our source remains the same.
And
it's
it has
unchanged, comes from the same place every time.
Well, and because everything that the world will offer us for quote unquote joy or happiness is temporary.
Yeah.
It's not sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
It's not everlasting.
Yeah. Well, and joy and peace aren't transferable.
Nope,
so
I can't share it with you.
You can't be like, oh, you're having a bad day. Well, like I'm feeling like super peaceful and joyful today. So here's some of mine. Like happiness can be contagious. Sometimes when you're feeling down, but you're around other people who are like laughing and having a great time, like that can lift you up, but that's not like that's circumstantial. That's
it's
just momentary. Yeah.
It's circumstantial. Yeah, and like I said, it's God is not momentary. God is not circumstantial, and that's what, like we said at the beginning of this, is happiness is based on your happenstance.
Yeah.
So you can be in a really great place and feel really good because you're in a great place, but you're not always going to be there.
Yeah.
So, with all of that being said, here's the flip side of that coin. If I'm not happy, if I'm not joyful, if I'm not full of peace, what do I do? How do I become happy and joyful and peaceful? What is it that you would say you did between last night and this morning that you woke up in a better spot?
Oh, you put me on the spot.
I'm putting you on the spot, yeah.
I think for me, it didn't look like what I would like to say right now is like, you know what? I went to my prayer closet and I got alone with God and he just really did something in me, but I didn't. It looked like, God, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm kind of mad at you right now because I feel like if you were really in control of my life, it wouldn't be feeling like this.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of my conversation with God.
And there's been conversations that me and you have had. It's like, why does it have to be so freaking hard?
Yeah.
We prayed about this. We heard from God over and over and over again, and we followed him. Mm-hmm. Why is this so hard?
Yeah. Well, and I think, so for me, it looked like kind of having those hard conversations, which for me, I don't think, maybe other people feel a little differently, but I don't think God's up there like, hey, you have to get on your knees and like say this formal prayer of like, dear Jesus.
No.
I think he wants us to talk to him.
Just like you did. God,
Yeah.
I'm mad at you. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
'Cause
he wants to hear that.
like, how do we have conversation? If I'm mad at you, like sometimes that looks like me saying, hey, I'm mad at you. Like you did this thing and I didn't like it, or it made me feel this way. Like that's a conversation. And I think that God wants us to have those conversations with him.
And they suck. They do.
Yeah.
But it's real. God's not a magician. He doesn't like put fairy dust on our lives and make things everything better.
No.
He actually tells us that in this life we will face trials and troubles and tribulations. He actually tells us that life will be hard. Just because we follow him doesn't mean everything's going to work out.
Yeah.
But the difference between last night and this morning and what changed in you is, like you said, you had a conversation with God.
That, and I had to make an intentional choice that I was not going to sit in my misery.
Yeah.
Like yesterday was a bad day, and sometimes you have bad moments and sometimes you have whole bad days.
Yep.
And yesterday mostly was just a whole bad day.
Yeah. So I also think, because I think a lot of times people will say, well, just pray about it, pray about it, pray about it. Okay, well, yeah, there is power in prayer, and you should absolutely pray about it. But prayer, like Heather said, is not this, dear God, thank you for everything you, and like, it doesn't have to be, just have a conversation. He is our Heavenly Father. Mm-hmm. He wants to have conversations with us. But so what we're getting at is what can we do? So pray, identify the cause. So, we've talked a lot about our move. We've talked about the financial situation we're sitting in. The vehicles being broke down yesterday. So all of that, we talked about it. Mm-hmm. Have somebody that you trust. If you're married, ideally your spouse, someone, like I said, someone who you can trust, but it also has a foundation that's rooted in Christ. Mm-hmm. And being willing to listen to whoever you talk to.
Yeah. Well, and whoever you choose to talk to, like, who you talk to about how you're feeling matters. Like, don't just talk to anybody. Like, don't talk to somebody if you're the type of person who likes to go out and party with, like, these people, but then you have these other people that you, like, trust spiritually. Don't talk to the people you go hang out with at the bar with this kind of stuff, because those are not the right kind of people. Also, I would encourage you to maybe not have those kind of people in your life.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe not have those kind of people in your life, but
progressive sanctification.
Progressive sanctification. Pastor Trustin, bring it on, bro. But also, like, if you're struggling in your marriage, don't talk to somebody that's divorced.
Yeah.
Like, not that they can't give good advice, but they're divorced.
And also, don't talk to someone of the opposite sex unless it's like, your dad or your brother.
Yeah. Like, I'm not going to reach out. Well, my sister, I could talk to my sister, but it needs to be in a way of like we said, somebody that's has a foundation rooted in Christ that you trust, that your spouse knows and trusts. Like, Heather knows I could go to my sister, and my sister's not going to talk. If there's something going on between me and Heather, and I'm talking to my sister about it, Heather knows that my sister's not going to be speaking negatively about Heather.
Yeah. She's not going to be like, well, you need to leave her.
Yeah. Oh, well, she's so stupid. Why would, it's, that's why we said somebody's trusted and founded and got their foundation rooted in God. But a friend, I mean, it could be just a really good, close friend. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, and I know I've done this many times, when Heather is struggling, whether it's just a bad day or a situational thing, I can try to encourage her and support her and love her and give her all the words, but sometimes she needs to hear it from somebody else. Mm-hmm. And I know there's been, on many occasions, I've reached out to your best friend and be like, hey, can you talk to Heather? Like, she's really struggling. Can you just reach out to her? Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's the best thing I can do to help you. Yeah. Is to take a step back and let somebody else step in.
Yeah. And that's, I think it's really good to be able to do that, to know that because I'm not your source.
Yeah.
Like, and only God is your source. Like, I'm not the only one that can speak life into you and encourage you. And so, I've done that before too. Reach out to other people, be like, hey, can you reach out to Terry? Mm-hmm. Because that, and it's times that you may not even have known that I have done that.
Yeah. But
maybe they said something that I said, but it just hits different because it comes from somebody else.
Yeah. Just like when I tell the kids not to do something and they don't listen, but somebody else tells them, hey, you shouldn't do that. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's different whenever it comes from someone else.
Yeah. So, here's another question for you. What are my daily thoughts? What are we focusing on? What is the situation that we have at hand that, mine has situation. It's, we've moved. We're in a new place. We've left what we called home for nearly 10 years. We've left all of our friends that we had for so long. And so it'd be really easy for me to focus on just the negative thoughts and the negative feelings. And I miss our friends. I miss our church. I miss Texas. Mm-hmm. especially in those moments where I'm feeling down. And if I'm feeling down and I'm focusing on why I'm feeling down, that almost intensifies those feelings. It makes it even more difficult. And not that you can't focus on those things, but at a certain point you have to say, okay, I've got to flip my thoughts here. I've got to flip my focus. What is something that I can do that will lift my emotions, lift my thoughts, lift my feelings, make me feel better? Well, obviously, going back to God, praying, having a conversation with God, having a conversation with you, listening to good Christian upbeat music. It'd be really easy for me to turn on a sad song when I'm feeling sad and feel even sadder.
Yeah. Don't feed the beast. That's what I say. Don't feed the beast.
Exactly.
Like if you're feeling, and I'll say this, I experienced this back whenever me and Terry were first walking through everything, when His Affairs first came out, and I was listening to whatever kind of music I wanted to. I mean, just whatever was on the radio that sounded good. And I realized one day, whenever there was a country song on, and couldn't tell you what it was, but it was talking something about getting his stuff and like throwing it on the lawn and like burning it and stuff. And I found myself like wanting to do that. I was like, yes, I want to burn all his stuff. And it was like this realization of like, oh my word. Like I didn't feel like that before I heard that song. Like, yeah, I've been mad and hurt, but never once did the thought of wanting to burn his stuff enter my mind until I heard that song. And so by listening to, you think music doesn't matter, like what I listen to doesn't matter, but it's so impactful, because especially in those moments when you're not feeling well, whether it's sad or you're mad or, just down, what you're putting into your ears, that's going into your brain, that's going into your heart. And so if I'm feeling angry because you cheated on me, and then I hear a song that's talking about, I'm so mad because my husband cheated on me and I want to burn all those stuff. Well, guess what I'm going to want to do? I'm going to want to burn all of his stuff.
Yeah. And it goes even further than music. Like, what kind of podcast are you listening to?
Yeah.
What shows are you watching? Yeah. Like,
I struggle with anxiety, and I don't understand why I feel so anxious after I watch this horror movie.
Yeah.
Maybe don't watch the horror movie.
And it could go so much further in so many different directions. I don't watch horror movies. I don't watch demonic possessed movies. I don't watch movies about cults. Like, all of those things are real, and if you think they're not, you're lying to yourself, because they are. And so allowing those things into your ears, allowing those things that you're watching, those are all feeding you. If those are feeding you, something Pastor Trustin talked about was when he talked about tithe, that you should be tithing because it's a biblical, but also you should be tithing at your storehouse, at your home church, where you're being fed. And so if I'm feeding my eyes with a horror movie, or like Heather said, a scary movie, and you're dealing with anxiety, where you're just going to make those things worse.
You're feeding the beast.
Feeding the beast, exactly.
Like, if I would look at anxiety as a beast, like it's not a good thing. A beast is not a good thing.
No.
If you struggle with anger, that's a beast. It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And so if you have a beast and you want it to go away, you can't feed it. Like, what does something do when you feed it? It grows.
Stays.
Like, guess what? Your kids grow because you feed and nurture them.
If you feed a stray cat, guess what? It's going to stick around.
Yeah. And so, it's going to stay and it's going to grow. And so if, you are struggling with negative thoughts, if you're struggling with anger, if you're struggling with sadness, like, now there is probably clinical reasons for some of that, maybe a doctor needs to come into, but just in general, if it's circumstantial, like you have to be intentional to not feed into those things. Like yesterday when I was feeling like I was feeling, like I didn't go and turn on music that was super depressing and, sad. And I don't remember if I turned on music at all because I was busy like making some phone calls and stuff, but I didn't turn on the opposite of that for sure.
Well, and we can't focus on it. Yes, it's healthy to know where you're at, to understand why you're feeling what you're feeling, but you have to find an alternative to the way you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we are thinking about at the moment, like I said earlier, I could focus on missing my friends all the time, but what's the alternative? Well, the alternative to that is we are now anywhere between 15 and 45 minutes of my parents, your parents, my sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the alternative to, we have nobody, we miss all of our friends. Okay, well, but we're now closer to friends, or we're now closer to family, and so we have to make an intentional decision to do the opposite of what we're feeling.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so sometimes we don't want, say if I'm feeling down and you encourage me to like turn on some worship music and I'm like, no, I don't want to listen to worship music right now. Well, that's a good indicator to me that I need to turn on some worship music.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the alternative looks like doing something that you maybe don't want in that moment.
Yeah.
So maybe I don't want to listen to worship music, but maybe that's exactly what I need.
Yeah.
And because the way Satan works is he comes in and he tells you that that's not good. Like he tells you worship music's not going to help you. God's not going to help you. He's not going to get you out of this. He's not going to do anything for you. Look where you are. Like he's going to tell you all these negative thoughts that you have. Like that's where it comes from. And so you have an intentional choice to make in those moments of saying, well, I don't want to do that, but I'm going to do it. I know I've turned on worship music more times than I can count when I really didn't want to.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like singing. I didn't feel like feeling good. I just wanted to sit in my feelings for a little while.
But you were feeding yourself in a positive way at that point. Mm-hmm. And like you're talking about, Satan's not going to want you to do that. Satan will do anything and everything he can to pull you out of the church, pull you out of community. He will do anything and everything he can to keep you from trying to put yourself in a better position. Mm-hmm. So if you're currently trying to get back in the church, if you're currently trying to find that community, anything and everything he can do to stop that from happening, he's going to do. Mm-hmm. If you feel uncomfortable, if you feel completely out of place, if you feel anger or resentment toward your spouse because they want to go and you don't, well, maybe you should take a step back and say, why am I feeling this way? Did my spouse actually do something to make me feel this way towards them? Mm-hmm. Or why am I feeling so negative about this or towards them? And I can tell you it's probably because God has something for you. You're trying to step into something new and something that's healthy for you, and Satan does not want that to happen.
Yeah. So how do we obtain joy, peace, happiness?
Well, like we said, happiness is circumstantial. So if you look at your circumstances and see what you can change, see what change can be made. Mm-hmm. If the whole situation with the cars, and it's a silly thing, but you reached out to your mom and dad, and I talked to your dad, and I reached out to my mom and dad, and I talked to my dad, and trying to figure out a solution for the problem. Mm-hmm. But also, if I'm feeling uncomfortable, like last Sunday, we tried out a new church, and Heather loved it. Mm-hmm. She's talked a lot about how much she enjoyed it and how much she felt welcomed there. And it wasn't that I didn't feel welcome, and it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it, but it's been such a battle for me after going to our church as long as we did, mm-hmm. to try to step in to something new, and to feel like that's where we're supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And it's so difficult for me because More Church was our home. Yeah. And that was really the first time we ever had a church that I would say was home, was our family. And so it's been difficult for me to go in and be like, just be open, Terry. Just don't have any expectations. Mm-hmm. don't have any predetermined, this is the way it should be, and this is what I'm expecting, and I want this to happen this way. Like, because it's not ever going to be the same.
No, you can't compare.
But that's circumstances.
Yeah.
And circumstances are always changing.
Yeah. And so if you're looking to obtain strictly happiness, which happiness and joy are, completely different things. But because happiness is circumstantial, you just have to look at your circumstances and see, what can be changed.
What can I do? What can I do to make this situation better?
Yeah. But joy and peace can only be found in God. So only if we truly trust him and are willing to give him our struggles and worries and fears and doubts, that's when true joy and peace come in. Now, I think there can be moments where joy and peace are circumstantial, but that's not true joy and that's not true peace. And what I mean is, like, there are moments where maybe things just feel like they're completely chaotic, but then something happens and something works out and it's not as bad as what I thought it was. Like, maybe you're feeling really fearful about going to the doctor because you think it's one thing, and you go and you find out it's not that at all. It's nothing, and you feel that relief. And some people mistake that for peace. But true peace is not having that super fearful thought of going in. It's one thing to be concerned, but ultimately having peace, knowing, whatever the outcome, like, God's got me. God's taking care of me. That's peace. The alternative to that that I just described is feeling fearful, and then it's not as bad as I thought, and so now I feel relief. And that relief is just that. It's just relief. It's not peace. Yeah. And so I think having an understanding of what true peace means and where it comes from is important, so that you know what it is and how to get it, and not, just experiencing this false sense of peace because you don't understand what true peace is. Yeah, because
if it's circumstantial, it's like you said, what you're saying is, if it's circumstantial in the moment, it's not lasting. Yeah. So we have to get to a place where we are experiencing true joy and peace. That takes time, but it also takes making the daily intentional decision to give everything to God.
Which is really hard. Like, it's really easy to tell people, like, oh, just give it to God.
Oh, yeah, it's real easy to say that.
To God. Oh, you're struggling? Honey, you just need to give it to God.
Just pray about it.
It's really easy to tell people to do that. It's a whole other thing to actually do it yourself.
It's always easier to say something than it is to actually do it, especially when you have to be doing whatever that is more than once. In the last 4 weeks that we've been in Arkansas, it would be really easy for anybody that I talk to say, it's going to be okay. You guys are going to be great. You guys are going to flourish. You guys are going to be prosperous. You guys are going to be a blessing. You guys are going to get blessed. But it's a whole nother thing for me to go and say, God, I'm struggling. This is really freaking hard. This sucks. I know this is what you've called us to. I know we are here for a reason. I don't doubt what you have told us. I don't doubt that you have a plan for us. I don't doubt that you have a plan for our kids. But it's hard. And that's marriage in general. Yeah. Marriage is hard. Life is hard. But we have to make sure that we are grounding our joy and our peace in God. And when we're grounded in him, what do? We always go back to him.
Yeah. No matter, like, yesterday I had a moment where I think I even said something about, why do I want to serve a God who, like, lets it be like this, like, who allows it to be like this. Yeah. I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but, and I don't believe that God was mad at me for saying that. I think he understands the situation. But for me, I didn't stay in that. I know that we're supposed to be here. I have that peace. And so I'm going to keep going back to him. And I know even in those moments, like that moment, I felt like I was just kind of mad at God.
Yeah, it's hard. It's not easy. Life isn't easy. But you spoke to me, talked to me about it. I tried to encourage you, and I prayed for you, and it worked. It's going to work out. We're sitting here talking about how we should be planted in God and allow ourselves to have Him as our foundation and our source, and He is. But there's still the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
There's still the thoughts of, how does this work?
Mm-hmm.
There's still the thoughts of, why are we here?
Yeah. I think one of the things I said yesterday was like, I think I said it to my dad. I said, it feels like we're in a car driving around the longest corner ever. Like one of those corners that you can't see around.
If you've been to Arkansas, you know what we're talking about.
You don't really know, like, one, you don't know how long this corner is. Like, am I just going to drive in a full circle? Like, where does this corner end? But what's around it? Like, you don't know. Is there somebody that's going to be in my lane?
Yeah.
That's going to hit me head on? Like,
No.
Is there going to be a deer running across the road? Is there, like, what kind of obstacles are around this corner? Like, I can't see around the corner, and it's scary. And, like, that's a really scary place to be when you don't know what's coming around the corner.
Yeah.
But that's where, like, you have to, be looking to God as your source for that peace and trusting that He's going to bring that and provide that, so that no matter what is around the corner, like,
God's got it.
It'll be fine, because, like, we're leaning on Him and trusting in Him. And maybe that looks like I have a job tomorrow. And maybe that looks like I don't have a job for 2 months.
Yeah.
And maybe that looks like your hours are crap for a little while. Like, maybe it looks like our finances are, not great for a little while. But He's always provided before.
Yeah.
And so
why would He not provide again?
He's going to continue to do that. And if we're looking to each other for that joy and that peace, like, when in moments like right now, when we're struggling, when finances aren't what they look like, when it's just not how you would envision that life should go, then we're going to crumble if we're looking to each other to be that source.
And we'll probably get mad at each other.
Mm-hmm.
We probably would. We probably would be like, this sucks. You're not helping the situation. I'm
It's
mad.
your fault.
It's your fault.
Yeah.
So guess what? It's not my job to make you happy.
Yeah. And it's not my job to make you happy. But guess what? It's not your job to make me happy. And I know that. I think there's
a difference.
We were talking about this before we started, about, like, what do we title this, and how, like, there can almost be a negative connotation to it's not my job to make you happy. But I think it's not my job to make you happy, but that
it's
not your job to make me happy.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to have both sides of that.
Mm-hmm.
If you have one person saying, it's not my job to make you happy, but the other person is like, yes, it is your job. You have to have one person saying, it's not my job to make you happy, and the other person is saying, it's not your job to make me happy. And I know that. It is not
your job.
Because you're not my source.
That's right.
And so you both have to have that knowledge that you're not that source for each other.
Nope.
You have to have God as your source.
Exactly. And the closer we are to Him, the closer we are to each other, and He's going to work it out.
Yep. He's more than able.
He is more than able.
That's good.
All right, y'all. Sorry we're late on releasing it, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And we'll catch you on the flip side.
Yeah. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.